Hello, this is Mike Dixon, and this is the Bolivia Baptist Wednesday night Bible study for the 1st of July, 2020. We've spoken previously about how the cross revolutionizes our relationships with God, with the community of God, with ourselves, and today we're going to be studying how it revolutionizes our relationship with the world. I think that this is a very timely message, considering what is happening today. You have our country in a state that I've never seen it in my years here. It's absolutely heartbreaking. The violence and the hatred, regardless of what side you're on. God has an answer for these attitudes, for these times. When hurt or cheated by someone else, who hasn't felt the desire to get even? Some people try to settle the score right away, others wait, bide their time. The words get even seem to express a desire for fair play, don't they? You're going to get even, you're going to even this, you're going to make it fair. If one side has been unfairly beaten down, and then the score is evened up, an eye for an eye, it would appear that justice has been done, but has it? Is an eye for an eye justice? Whether or not we look at getting even as a form of justice, one thing is certain. The offender and the offended will remain unreconciled. The rabbis used to have, our laws and courts are based upon Judeo-Christian values. Laws about neighbors having a claim against each other are very ancient. And the rabbis had various remediations to different circumstances. So if one neighbor's ox got loose and tore down his neighbor's fence, what do you do in those situations? What is the compensation? So there was different levels. They believed that the best outcome was one in which the neighbors were reconciled and left as friends. It's not which one was paid. The best outcome was when they became reconciled and left as friends. Consider a divorce court. Consider that someone does something cruel to their spouse and then they end up going to divorce court, and then that person loses everything. The house is given to the other spouse. Is that the best outcome? Is that what God desires? That they leave hating each other, but fairly compensated? Does God desire fair compensation, or would he rather we love each other? Paul writes to the Romans about this very thing. And it's unique and important to us that it's the Roman community that he's writing to. Because Rome at the time, the Christians were living there and things were getting very bad. Rome had, seen its glory and was on the downside of its history, and it was at this point being grossly mismanaged at the highest levels of government. Also, people were becoming increasingly hostile to Christians, and it was becoming dangerous for Christians out on the street. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time was extremely dangerous. Now, these are Roman citizens. This is not necessarily slaves. These are people who considered themselves patriots, and they were watching their communities being destroyed and themselves being persecuted, and the highest levels of governments failing. To compound to this, the government was turning against them. Nero was becoming increasingly hostile to them and was, I don't know if it was right at the point, but it was about to be where he was beginning to kill them. He allowed a large section of the city to be burned and blamed it on the Christians, and used that as a pretext to go after them. So they had some serious problems. They were having problems with the fellow citizens, and they were having problems with their government. And Paul wrote an interesting reply to them. We're going to begin with Romans 12:9 and then Romans 12:14 through 21. And let's read it together. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge. I will repay," says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. To live under the cross means that every aspect of our lives is shaped by it. The cross directs our conduct in relation to others, including our enemies. We are to exhibit in our relationships that combination of love and justice which characterize the wisdom of God in the cross. Remember, God took sin, evil, seriously, and it had to be paid for. It had to be dealt with. But how did he deal with it? He gave his only son. So you see that contrasting, weighty responsibility to, on the one hand, take sin and evil seriously and do something about it, but on the other hand, do so in love. How do we do that? Paul talks about that here. Based on this passage, what general statements can you make about how a Christian should respond to evil? These verses define what our Christian attitude to evil should be. First, foremost, evil is to be hated. It's preceded by love must be sincere. Whenever love is sincere, and that is literally without hypocrisy, some translations have love must be without hypocrisy. Whenever it's without hypocrisy, it is morally discerning. It never pretends that evil is anything else, nor does it ever condone evil. A lot of modern churches are condoning evil out of love as the pretext. I find that hard to believe. I don't allow my children to do whatever they want out of love. I don't allow my children to take drugs because I love them. It's what they want, but it's poisonous. It's bad for them. When you allow poison to come into your congregation and say it's because you love them, I really have to question that. True love is the pretext for resisting evil. It's my love for my wife and my children that causes me to not allow them to get themselves in danger. True love is morally discerning, and it treats evil as nothing but evil, and it never, ever condones evil. Second, evil is never to be repaid. We see that in verses 17 and 19. Listen, for us, revenge and retaliation are absolutely always forbidden. To the people of God, retaliation is always forbidden. To repay evil for evil is to add evil to it. You're now compounding evil. Third, evil is to be overcome. That means we are to actively overcome evil. We don't allow evil to overcome us. We actively resist and overcome evil. But it's not in the way that many people think. We don't take a gun out and start shooting people. In the community of Christ, curses are to be replaced with blessings. Malice is replaced by prayer. Revenge by service. Okay? Fourth, evil is to be punished. Evil is to be punished. So what is your reaction to Paul's advice here? What is your reaction to what he says? What do you think the Roman Christians who received this letter were thinking? You know, they saw their government actually hunting them down, and Paul is sitting here telling them, listen, bless those who persecute you. How would that feel to someone whose life or whose family's life was in danger? It was very difficult there for Christians. You know, I would say at that time, more difficult than it is for us here, but it seems like we're approaching that. Yet Paul still expected them to behave by these standards. Hate sounds like an unchristian attitude, doesn't it? What do you think it means to hate what is evil? Well, we love God. And because we love God, We hate anything that is an attack on him. Just like I was saying before about my family and how I love them. I hate anything that is a danger to my family. It's my love that causes that. I don't hate for hate's sake. I don't hate like Satan hates. I resist things that are destroying those that I love. My hatred comes from love. And that's an important distinction. I want you to consider what it would be like to live in a society that is characterized by chapter 12, 14 through 16. Look at that. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony one with another. Do not be proud. Be willing to associate with those of low position. Do not be conceited. What would it be like if everyone in this country lived by those rules? It'd be pretty close to paradise. Are you doing your part? Are you able to do these things? What do the four do nots in Romans 12, 14, and 17 through 21 have in common? What do those do nots have? Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Do not take revenge. They're followed by a positive. Christianity is never a purely negative concept. It's followed by a positive. He's telling you, don't do these things. This is what you do. Do not curse. You know, when I was in school, we had a question, do Christians pray for the hurt of other people? And this was the verse that came to my mind. I have no reason to curse anyone. I'm praying for their salvation. I was driving to Home Depot today, and a lady came peeling around the corner and tried to jump in front of me, almost hit me, and then was cussing me out. The best solution there is for that woman to get saved, for her to become my sister. Now, I was upset, I'm not gonna lie, but the right thing to do is not to pray for that woman to get hurt. Why would I want to do that to her children? I don't want her to get hurt. I want her to come to repentance and become saved, become my sister. So I don't pray for people to become hurt. I pray for people to get saved. That's the best outcome. But Paul also talks specifically about government. And I think this is extremely important for both sides of what's going on in America today, for everyone to realize this. And we're going to read Romans 13, 1 through 5. And listen to this. Listen to this. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God, period. Consequently, whoever rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. Read that again. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right and you will be commended. And keep in mind, he's talking about Nero here to Christians. Do you want to be free from fear from Nero? Then do what is right and you'll be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good, whether you realize it or not. That policeman is there for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servant, again, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoers. And I believe this is whether they realize it or not. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. So what do you think Paul is saying here? Why does he say that me and you should submit to authority, to not bring out weapons and rebel against the government no matter what we think? Why does the believer not do that? Because that government is established by God. The government of the United States of America, do you honestly believe that this place was not intended as a shelter for the church during that time? As a place where all believers could come and pray and worship freely? This country was established by the Lord, and the Constitution was clearly. And the authorities that he has today are established by him. Listen, there's times in my life, I don't, it's a bad habit for me to get political. And I'm trying to get away from it. There's been times in my life where I was extremely frustrated by the people in charge. Hey, listen, the last 3 years have been crazy, with, all levels of government. What has been going on, this chaos. It's extremely frustrating for me. And there's been times where I'm like, man, we need to blow this place up. But I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. It's wrong. It was established by God for my own good, whether I realized it or not. Those certain presidents that I didn't appreciate were there by God's command. And they were there for a reason. They were there for the church. So we submit to authorities on all levels, from the top to the mayor of your city, to the security guard at the front of your, cousin's community. We submit to authorities. We don't rebel as the church. And there is no church in America that could be justifying that behavior biblically. There should not be a pastor in this country encouraging his congregation to go out and rebel, to riot, to loot, to burn. It's absolutely unbiblical. And Paul, listen, you don't have it worse than the Christians in Rome under Nero. There ain't a person in America living what they lived right now. We have no reason. If Paul was telling them, listen, you have no reason to be afraid of Nero. He's a servant of God. He wields that sword for a reason. You may not understand why, but he does. Then we have no reason to rebel. We have no reason to rebel. But then consider that. When and how are you most tempted to take matters into your own hands and retaliate? I mean, I'm tempted just like anybody. My whole life has been one of fighting. I was as a little boy, I fought and fought and fought and fought. I do not like bullies. I don't like seeing injustice, and I've always stood up for the underdog, and I've always tried to do what is right, and I've never been scared to fight about it. But that's a bad habit, and that's, as an adult, obviously I don't bust my fist out, but I've got to stop that urge within me to take matters into my own hands. Why? Why do we not do that? Think about that. How much good can you do? How much good for you, yourself? Let's say that you set out tonight to write out a plan to fix everything that's wrong with this country. How much could you do? How much damage could you do? How much good could you do? Let's say that you could get out and do one thing. Now think about, what could God do? How much good could God do? Consider Mordecai and Esther in the book of Esther. What did they do? Did they go out and arm all of the Jews there? Did they go out and arm all the Jews and say, hey, come on, we're going to overthrow the government? No, they prayed. And then they allowed God to do his work. And God did his work. See, God can do so much more than I can do. And I need to give him a chance, rather than me putting my foot in it. I want you to spend a few minutes in quiet reflecting on loving your enemies this week. One of the most difficult commands of the Bible. Meditate on it. Pray about it. Ask yourself, how can you love someone that you might sometimes feel like you hate? In light of the cross, what is God calling you to do or understand about your enemies? That's all for this week. I hope to see you next Wednesday.